All right, today we're going to be talking about My Plate. You've probably seen this poster up either in my classroom or maybe in the lunchroom or maybe just heard about it or seen it on TV. It's a government designed program to help all people, not just middle school students, not just children, to make good choices with the foods that we eat. Far too often we fill our plates with the food that we like, let's say the macaroni and cheese or the steak. I mean, I think we've all seen a steak that literally is half the size of a plate. And what you're going to see through My Plate that's just too big. That's just too much. You know, a steak can be fatty, can be high in calories. Sometimes we top it with butter and other things that, again, aren't good for us. So we need to be filling our plate with good choices, especially with fruits and vegetables. Because if we can fill our stomachs with the good stuff, we're less likely to fill our stomachs with the bad stuff, if that makes sense. To keep introducing My Plate, I have a quick little 2-minute video here that really does a good job illustrating what My Plate is all about. And it came from the government. So this is, an educational piece meant to just kind of tell everybody what My Plate is. And you're going to see in the video that My Plate has replaced the food pyramid. You might remember in elementary school hearing about or talking about the food pyramid, which again was designed to make sure that we get a balanced diet at every meal of the different food groups. Well, the My Plate does the same, but it just replaced it in a way that we all can look at and make sense of. So just a short little video about My Plate.
For Americans to lead happy, productive lives, it helps to stay healthy, active, and fit. It's really pretty simple. Choose a healthier plate and balance it with exercise. It all comes down to the choices we make. That's why I'm excited to introduce to you USDA's new food icon, My Plate, a simple reminder to make healthy food choices. My Plate symbolizes mealtime and the food groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. A healthy plate for every meal. It's easy, and what we eat matters. Overweight and obesity rates are at dangerously high levels, and the Obama administration has worked to support Americans who want to improve their health and nutrition. My Plate is a departure from the food pyramid you're used to seeing. It's an easy-to-understand visual that shows how to build a healthy meal based on the 2010 dietary guidelines for all of Americans. And if you want to learn more about a healthy diet, you can visit choosemyplate.gov to get messages, tools, and how-to materials about healthy eating. This website will equip consumers with information on staying healthy and tips on balancing calories, foods to increase, and foods to reduce. I hope you're as excited as I am about My Plate and the other resources to help Americans make healthy choices at choosemyplate.gov. Next time you sit down for a meal, before you eat, think about what's on your plate. And in the months and years ahead, we hope that My Plate becomes your plate.
You know, one thing you're going to notice by just looking at this picture is half the plate is fruits and vegetables. Now, some of you are very good at eating fruits and vegetables. Obviously, the school makes you take, I believe, one of each. Some of your parents probably make you eat them at dinner. But can you imagine if literally half the foods you ate from here on out were good choices, as opposed to, oh, I just, basically choke down a few carrots or a couple spoonfuls of peas or corn or something like that. I really think that we'd see a benefit across the board with everybody in this country if everyone truly followed this My Plate idea. So again, what is it? I think the video does a good job illustrating it, but My Plate illustrates the 5 food groups that are the building blocks for a healthy diet using a place setting for a meal. Now, we're not talking the 6 nutrients. We're talking the 5 food groups. The 6 nutrients may show up in several of the different food groups. Vitamins and minerals may be in all of them. Obviously, there could be water content in different parts of food. There could be protein or carbohydrates or fats in different food groups. So let's not confuse the two, the nutrients and the food groups. And it's just important before you eat to think about what goes on your plate or in a cup or in your bowl. Here's a bigger picture of the My Plate. And again, grains, we're thinking about, the pastas, your mashed potatoes, your rice, your side dishes. And it might even be the bun of your sandwich. The protein is going to be the smallest section, which typically for most people is the biggest section nowadays because we build our meals around the protein, the piece of chicken, the pork chop, the fish, the steak, the chicken nuggets, basically the meat. And that probably needs to be reduced for most people. Just a couple tips here. On the top left in the red, it says make your half your plate fruits and vegetables. That's important. Think low-fat dairy. On the right here, we should be having a glass of milk. 1%, maybe 2%. Skim would be the best choice, just because it's lower in fat, lower in calories. In the middle, vary your protein food choices. You don't always have to have a cheeseburger, but it could be a lean piece of a chicken breast, or a lean piece of meat, steak, or maybe eggs or something like that. On the bottom left, make half your grains whole grains. That's really important. We'll talk about that in a little bit further on. And of course, vegetables are something we should eat more often. And really, some people say we can have as much of as we want. All right, let's talk about each one of these areas. Let's start with fruits. A lot of you like fruits as a healthy snack. We do have a variety of fruits that are offered at lunch at school. My favorites are bananas and oranges. I do like apples, so there are a variety of things out there. Any fruit or 100% fruit juice counts as a part of the fruit group. I really challenge you when you are drinking fruit juice, look at the label. A lot of times it's a lot of sugar and other things added, and it's like 10% or 5% juice, which basically means in a lab somewhere they added a bunch of water and sugars together to make something that tastes like fruit punch or orange juice or whatever. Read the label. 100% fruit juice means it's basically squeezed right from the actual fruit. Fruits may be fresh, canned, frozen, dried, or maybe whole, cut up, or pureed. Pureed would be like a fruit smoothie in a blender. Great choice. Sometimes a really nice snack. Add a little yogurt or mix a couple fruits together. You can have a really good fruit smoothie. Make half your plate fruits and vegetables. You're going to hear that over and over again. Teen girls need about a cup and a half of fruits a day. If you think about it, one good handful is probably, for you as a middle school student, probably half a cup. So we're talking, 3 handfuls in a day, which if you, have one for a snack, one for lunch, one for dinner, you're getting close to what you need. Boys need a little bit more. We need 2 cups. And I think for examples of fruits, the picture in the bottom right, it does a good job, and I think most of us can come up with a lot of great examples of fruits that we like. So why do we eat fruits? What are some of the benefits? It's going to reduce the risk of heart disease, including heart attack, stroke, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. So it's going to make us healthier. Certainly a lot of adults struggle with some of these illnesses. Protect against certain types of cancer. I don't know about you, but if I can protect myself from getting sick, especially from cancer later on, by having maybe a couple extra fruits and vegetables a week or every day, I think it's totally worth it. May lower blood pressure and may also reduce the risk of developing kidney stones and help to decrease bone loss, especially in women. Now, those of you who don't know what kidney stones are like a collection of some minerals in your body, things like calcium, iron, whatever it might be, and they basically make tiny little pebbles, kind of like that would get stuck in the bottom of your shoe, in your kidneys. Well, the only way to pass them is when you go to the bathroom, when you urinate. And you can imagine a little rock traveling through your body to get out of your body, and how painful that would be. Some people experience that. One of the best ways to prevent or get rid of kidney stones is drink a lot of water to flush those excess minerals out of your body. Fruits and vegetables have tons of extra water that are good for that. So we want to be able to do that. Ways to incorporate fruit into your diet. I will have fruit for breakfast. I have a fruit smoothie in the morning. I put a banana, blueberries, things like that into a fruit smoothie. And I also will have a couple clementines or cuties for a snack. So we can come up with fun and creative ways to make sure we're getting what we need. Moving on to vegetables. Obviously, we can't talk about fruits without talking about vegetables. Same thing here. Any vegetable or 100% vegetable juice counts as a member of the vegetable group. A V8, if you read the label, make sure it has 100% vegetable juice, but can be a really good choice. It's always better to have the full raw piece of the vegetable instead of just the juice, but it is better than nothing. It's going to have a lot of those vitamins and minerals. Vegetables may be raw or cooked, fresh, frozen, canned, dried, rehydrated, maybe whole, cut up, or mashed. Certainly, when we're talking about potatoes, mashed potatoes are very, very popular. But what we have to be careful about with any of this stuff, especially vegetables, is what we put on the vegetables that can add fat and calories. I love broccoli, but you know what I love broccoli even more? With butter or cheese. And butter and cheese are full of calories and fat. Or we often dip our vegetables in ranch dressing, things like that. Mashed potatoes, we can add milk, butter, sour cream, cheese, salt, pepper, gravy, and we can make something that started out fairly healthy, pretty unhealthy very quickly. Again, make half your plates fruits and vegetables, and we're going to need a little bit more vegetables than we do fruits. Girls are going to need about 2.5 cups a day. Boys are going to need 3. Another good way to tell what a cup is, when you go through the lunch line and you use one of those big spoon scoops to put vegetables or fruit on your plate. That's again probably about a half a cup. It's about a handful. So we would need several scoops to get what we need. But you imagine spreading that out over some snacks and breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're getting what you need. And how do you incorporate vegetables into your diet? Again, use them as a snack. Carrot sticks, celery sticks can be a great snack. Maybe dip them in a little bit of peanut butter. Make sure you're getting them with lunch and dinner. Take the extra vegetable at lunch. Have a little salad. Great ways to incorporate that stuff throughout your day. The benefits of eating vegetables, very similar to fruits, but we do get a lot of different vitamins and minerals. They're sources of some great nutrients. And it would take us forever to go through all the different vitamins and minerals and really discuss what they do for our body, where we get them, and all the great things that they do for us. But we're just going to touch on a couple of them here. Vitamin A keeps eyes and skin healthy and helps protect against infections, keeps your immune system strong. Vitamin C helps heal cuts and wounds and keeps teeth and gums healthy. Also, another one that helps prevent against illnesses and disease. I'm sure a lot of you will take extra vitamin C when you're sick, or make sure that you have some orange juice or an orange or something like that. They can reduce the risk for heart disease, including heart attack, stroke, certain types of cancer, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. We saw that with fruits. You're going to see this over and over again. A proper diet really does a good job of protecting against the things that can hurt people. And heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States. People die from these type of illnesses more than anything else. Typically later in life, but the choices that we make now really make an impact on who we're going to be later in life. And they may also reduce the risk of developing kidney stones and help decrease bone loss, just like fruits. Again, a lot of water in a lot of these vegetables, and that water and the vitamins and minerals are really going to do a good job flushing us out and making sure our body's running the way it should, and protect it from bad things from happening. All right, moving on to grains. Actually, probably one of my favorite areas of food. I love pasta. I love rice. Typically with some sort of cheese sauce, Alfredo, marinara, even butter and gravy and things like that can all be good on this. We have to limit those things, but a good pasta with some vegetables and some lean protein can make for a really good meal. We're talking about any food made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, barley, or other cereal grain is a grain product. Now, I don't expect a lot of you to have barley and cornmeal and things on your plate, but these things are made into tortillas, to pasta, to cereal, to bread. And again, you can imagine how many meals of your day contain some sort of product like that. Just having a sandwich or a hamburger, you have a bun. So a very, very common group of foods here. Other things, grits are an example of grain products. Grits are typically eaten in the southern part of the United States. It's kind of like a more runny mashed potato. Can be added, a lot of things added to it, again, butter and things that make it unhealthy, but kind of a fun little side dish that you see in a lot of cooking shows. Grains are divided up into 2 groups, whole grains and refined grains. We really want to be eating the whole grains. Refined grains are what a lot of you would choose if given the opportunity. We're typically talking about your white bread. Means a lot of the original parts of the grain are taken out and made it into a real simple grain or simple bread. whole grain or whole wheat bread, for the most part, it's basically everything that was there when they harvested the wheat or barley or whatever it might be, and that's good for your digestive system. That's good for a lot of different reasons when you eat it. But I do know that a lot of people prefer white bread. I used to love white bread when I was your age. I basically probably converted more to wheat when I was in high school. That is my choice now. The only place I ever eat white bread is probably at Jimmy John's when I get their French bread roll. I really do like that bread. But they also have a 9 grain whole wheat that you can get your sandwich on. I highly recommend it. If you go to Jimmy John's, it's really, really good. And whole grains versus refined, whole grains contain the entire germ, or excuse me, the entire grain kernel. And the kernel is made up of 3 different things: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. And basically, we're just talking about different parts of the kernel of the, grain. You harvest wheat, or you bring in some sort of grain product from the field, and it's, if you've ever seen the top of wheat, there's little seeds and things on it. A lot of that is going to maintain or stay in the product when we use it to cook. And the level of grains is really going to that you need is going to depend on a lot of different things. Your age, your sex, your level of physical activity. Males are going to need more than females. Grains are full of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our body's main preferred source of energy. So if the more active you are, the more grains we're going to want. The bigger you are, the more you're going to need. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm going to need more than probably the average 7th grader. And you want to make at least half your grains whole grains. If you're eating all refined grains like Pop-Tarts and sugary cereals and white bread, you're really not getting what you need and what your body wants. But if you're having whole wheat and whole grain cereals, which a lot of cereals are turning to now, you're on the right path. And there's whole wheat pasta too. Some of you probably have eaten that too. I prefer white pasta, but whole grain pasta can be good too. Just a little bit different texture, but much better choice. A lot more fiber, much better for your body. So let's talk about why we need these grains. What are the benefits for our body? Consuming whole grains as a part of a healthy diet may reduce the risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and cancer. Again, things that we've been hearing in all these different food groups. If we eat the things we're supposed to, our bodies are going to react naturally. Now, you think back to cavemen days or days when people didn't have a grocery store to go to. You made things off the land. You killed animals. You harvested fruits and vegetables. You harvested grain and made it into bread. People were healthier that way, because they weren't processed and they were eating more whole grain type foods, especially when they were using grains and things like that. Consuming foods containing fiber, such as whole grains, as a part of a healthy diet may reduce constipation. Going to the bathroom is a very important part of our health. And if we're not eating the right things, we get backed up and our digestive system doesn't work properly. It can lead to weight gain. Good fiber in our foods, especially in whole grain foods like cereals, breads, and pastas and things like that, help us go to the bathroom more and clean our system out. Just think of your body of having internal plumbing. If the plumbing's not working, there's going to be clogs and backed up, and we certainly don't want that. We want our plumbing to be working the way it was meant and free and clear. And eating whole grains may help with weight management. We're less likely to gain extra weight if we're going to the bathroom, if we're eating the right things. All right, moving on to the protein section. This is one that, for the most part, we build our meals around. If I'm going to make dinner, I don't think about the great carrots I'm going to make and what it's going to go along with it. I'm thinking about the piece of meat, the piece of chicken, the pork chop, the piece of fish, the steak. Now, I'm not a big steak fan, but some of you are. And again, the meat can often dominate the plate of food, and that tends to be too big. The average size piece of protein should be the size of a deck of cards. You think about a deck of cards, it's not very big, but if you put it on a plate, it would match up with the size of the protein that is suggested by my plate. All foods made from meat, poultry, which would be chicken and turkey, things like that, seafood, beans and peas, eggs, processed soy products like tofu, nuts, seeds are part of the protein foods group. Bean and peas are also vegetables, so they kind of double dip here, which makes them a very good choice. And teen girls need about 5 ounces a day. Boys need about 6.5 ounces a day. That's about a third of a pound. 16 ounces is a pound. So you can imagine that's probably a couple good scoopfuls of beans or peas or something at dinner, you know, but it's not very much when it comes to meat. You know, it's very easy to go to a restaurant and get a half pound or a quarter pound burger. Well, a quarter pound burger is 4 ounces, which is just under what we need. But that's at one meal. My guess is you're going to eat protein at just about every meal. Peanut butter can also be protein. We tend to way overdo the protein, and our body doesn't need the excess stuff. And the excess protein, fats, carbohydrates, if we don't get rid of it when we go to the bathroom, we store it as fat. So we need to limit the protein a little bit and really add those fruits and vegetables because they're lower in calorie. They're high density foods. They're going to have great nutrients, vitamins and minerals, but very low calories. And a lot of the proteins are going to have high fat and just, protein, not a whole lot of other vitamins and minerals. We need to think of proteins as the building blocks for bones, muscles, cartilage, skin, and blood. Basically, who you are is built up by proteins. All right? Not that if you eat a ton more protein, you're going to get bigger and stronger, but the more active we are, the more we overload our muscles, the more we're going to use protein to rebuild them up. If I do a bicep curl, if I go in the weight room and do some lifting, and I, tax my muscles to work harder than you're used to, they're going to get beat up. They're going to get broken down. That's how we build muscle. We break them down by working out. And then over the next 24, 48, 72 hours, 2 or 3 days, our body builds them back and often builds them stronger. And we do that with the foods we eat. So if we do have good protein in our body, we're likely to build strong, sturdy muscles, bones, and all that good stuff. And you think about, look at this picture. What foods could provide you enough protein for the day? A lot of us come up with a lot of things, but beans, peas, nuts, and those things are other great examples. As a snack, I'll have a handful of almonds in the afternoon. Cheese and milk are often good choices too, as long as they're low fat. Another area that a lot of you use when you eat is dairy. Having milk is an important part of your diet, but it also comes in different forms like cheese, butter, yogurt, a lot of different things. We just have to make sure we're making good choices. I love cheese. I could put cheese on just about anything, but cheese comes with some fat and calories, and we do need to limit it a little bit. All fluid milk products and many foods made from milk are considered to be dairy. Most dairy group choices should be fat-free or low fat. I've never drank much whole milk in my life. Some of you probably grew up on that. Whole milk is basically what we get from the cow that has a level of fat in it. When we go down to 2%, 1% of skim, they just take away some of the fat and make it, basically a lower fat content. I grew up on 1% milk, loved it, still enjoy it, but in college I switched to skim and have never gone back. Skim milk is one of my favorite things to drink in the whole wide world. Foods made from milk that have little to no calcium, such as cream cheese, cream, and butter, they're not good dairy choices, all right? So I'm not saying to go home and put a bunch of butter on things and suggest that you're getting your dairy for the day. Again, switch to fat-free or low-fat milk, typically 1%. 2% is a little bit worse, but not a bad choice. Better than whole milk as a whole. Teen girls and boys need about 3 cups a day, and your milk carton at lunch would be 1 cup. I can easily drink 2 large glasses of milk at dinner, and that would be 4 cups. Milk does have calories, has a little bit of sugar in it, so we do have to make sure that we're not overdoing it. But 1 carton for lunch and then a tall glass of dinner would be a good way to get your dairy, along with maybe a little cheese or other things along the way. And the benefits of dairy: intake of dairy products is linked to improved bone health and may reduce the risk of osteoporosis. Basically, osteoporosis is a condition in which bones are not as strong as they could be. They start to break down and get a little brittle, and you can imagine if your bones aren't as strong as they could be, the more active we are, the more likelihood we're going to get injured or break a bone. And this is a big concern for women later in life because they typically don't get enough calcium and their bodies are just a little bit different. So we want to make sure that we're getting the calcium we need through dairy products. The intake of dairy products is especially important to bone health during childhood and adolescence when bone mass is being built. You are a growing child. We want you to be as big and strong as you possibly can. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we're eating the right foods and taking in the right amounts of calcium and dairy at this age to make sure that for the rest of your life you are built to be as strong as you can be. And the intake of dairy products also is associated with a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and a lower blood pressure in adults. So again, good things to prevent later in life by eating and drinking the right things as a child or as a teenager. The last section on here isn't on my plate, but it's important to discuss because we do need some oils in our day. Oils are not a food group, but they provide essential nutrients. Therefore, oils are included in the USDA food patterns. It used to be part of the old food pyramid, and it was important that we make sure that some foods contain oils or are cooked in some healthy oils. Oils are fats, and of course we need some fats that are liquid at room temperature, like vegetable oils used in cooking. Now, if you put a stick of butter out at room temperature, it's going to get soft, but it's going to stay hard. That's not the type of fat that we want. Oils come from many different plants and from fish. Some of you probably know some adults who take fish oil pills because it's good for your blood vessels and lowers the risk of heart disease and a heart attack from buildup of plaque and things in your arteries. I take fish oil pills every day, just a simple way to make sure that you're staying healthy. Teen girls need 5 teaspoons per day. Teen boys need about 6 teaspoons. I'm not talking and suggesting that you should go home and get out a spoon and a bottle of oil and just start, taking spoonfuls. But what you notice a lot of the foods that we eat and like are cooked in oils. You might have a chicken breast that's lightly cooked in olive oil or vegetable oil. Some of the foods that we eat are deep fried in oil, and some of those oils are good choices. Some of them are not. But in the natural cooking process, a lot of foods do come from oils. The best oils are coconut oil, olive oil, vegetable oil. There are some ones that we want to avoid, canola oil and other things, but there are some good choices out there.